Hello, welcome to Off the Shelf Reviews.
I am the wisdom that is Iain.
And I'm Gary. And today we're going to review and discuss The Entity, which came out in 1982. Iain, can you give us the synopsis for The Entity?
Well, the story follows Barbara Hershey playing Carla Moran, who appears to be being tormented by a poltergeist-like spirit. The spirit has a sexual fascination with Carla and will not let her go. But as she deepens her investigation of what's going on with her, she starts to question, is she just insane?
Go ahead, be honest, just tell me. You think I'm insane?
Insane? That means different things to different people, Carla.
So there's nothing you can do?
Well, not at the moment, Carla. First, we have to find out what the problem is.
In the meantime, I'll be dead.
This is a film based on a book written by Frank D. Fletta, and of course that book was based on a series of documented events. Now, the book was sort of criticised for exaggerating real events.
Yeah.
And then this film kind of took the events in the book and kind of slightly exaggerated them even more.
Yeah.
So that getting to the real truth of what happened has kind of been left it as a bit of a mystery. But we'll get into the reality of the situation. We'll just talk about the film for now. And before we get into the review, I'm just going to say that this film is one of the very few supernatural horror films, even though the director didn't even consider this a horror film per se.
Yeah.
This film has stayed with me always. Before The Exorcist, I saw this film. And even at a young age, watching this film, I didn't understand that she was being raped by a ghost.
Yeah.
It just felt like she was being attacked by a ghost, you know? And you also knew that this was no poltergeist. The film that came out the same year by Spielberg.
Well, what would you consider it?
What,
An
this?
angry spirit, which in itself is a poltergeist.
Well, yeah.
I remember when this film came out when I was younger, and there was a big kick up about it. Oh my God, have you seen The Entity? Oh, it's so scary, it's so terrifying. And I was too young to watch it at the time. Grew up, saw Poltergeist first, which I'm so fucking glad I did. And then happened to catch the first 15 minutes of The Entity and was like, I'm not really bothered by it, and turned it off until recently when somebody said, hey, can you review the film for the show? And I was like, oh, The Entity, oh, okay, right. And obviously the biggest draw you have of this film is that this woman is, well, for half the movie she's raped by an angry spirit, a poltergeist, and the film will fucking show you that in a lot of detail. But at the same time, this film was made in 1981, but then not released until September 1982, and then only got an American release, from what my notes say, in America in 1983. So this film had already been ready to come out before Poltergeist, and then Poltergeist had come out in June of 1982, and obviously smashed the fucking box office records for Steven Spielberg and Tobe Hooper, and then The Entity comes out after it, and The Entity looks so weak in comparison.
Well, yeah, it does almost look like a 70s movie, a late 70s movie.
Yeah.
And, but for me, it kind of, some of the ways that it's shot, it reminds me of episodes of The Twilight Zone or The Outer Limits.
Yeah, I can see that, yeah.
And, you get introduced to Barbara Hershey's character at the beginning, kind of at work.
Yes.
And you see her in the family life. And then it's the attack that's so sudden. And it is shocking.
Yeah, it is shocking, and I'm going to be devil's advocate in this film now, because like I said, I'd heard about this film, I'd read the notes, I'd kind of researched it. There have been a lot of paranormal movies since this film, and yet in my 36 years of being around on this rock, I haven't actually come across any evidence myself of supernatural activity. So when I'm sat down watching The Entity, I'm seeing Barbara Hershey. She is working all hours of the day. She is studying late hours of the night. She is coming home and trying to raise 3 children and take care of a house. And the fact that this film is based on a book which is itself based on events of the events of Doris Spither from 1974, which we'll get into. I immediately didn't see a ghost or paranormal, a poltergeist, paranormal activity. I saw a woman who was having a psychotic episode. I felt like she hit herself and threw her, and you know, yes, in the film we're seeing this spirit throw her on the bed and push the pillow onto her face, and she goes through the actions of being raped, which is absolutely harsh, but at the same time, by a ghost. Like the only other time I've seen a ghost make its moves was on Dan Aykroyd in Ghostbusters 1, you know.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the idea of spectral rape has apparently been around since
Jesus. You know, Mary was raped by the god, you know.
So it's always existed in literature.
Right, okay then. Yeah.
But yeah, actual any proof documenting it, no.
Yeah.
Because according to, even in the real story, when she sought help and had people around, she was never raped by the entity.
Yeah.
When she had witnesses around. Although there is after she's been attacked and she starts to freak out, she goes to her a friend's house.
Yes, yeah.
You know, and you see some scenes where she's just hesitant about going back to the house.
Yeah.
But when she does go back to the house, the spirit attacks her and rapes her in front of her entire family.
Yeah, the spirit also takes control of her car at one point.
Yes.
Now, that's a little bit later on, but she's completely freaked out by this event that's happened to her. And what I did love about this movie was the way, as the audience, you see her go through these violent episodes. You know, you see these things throw her against the wall and spread her legs and do things to her, and her, like I said, her family are there. Her son, who at first believes that she just had a nightmare and was overworked, is actually there trying to get her and being forced back by this entity, and is being electroshocked. And I'm like, okay, so as the audience, we are seeing that this thing is real. This thing is in her house. This thing has picked Carla especially as a sex toy. You know, he's going to use her for his own personal gain, gain. I don't know, how do ghosts do it?
Manifestations of some kind. I mean, I don't know, but the film for me is, it's brutal and it's horrifying watching her and the family go through these attacks. For me, it was unrelenting. There was no, playfulness to it.
No,
there was the sound effects of the pipe that they heard earlier, and the boy, Billy was just like, "Look, it's just the pipe."
It's just the pipe.
But it's like, but who's moving the pipe?
The floorboard.
Okay, so, but I mean, that's sort of as playful as it gets, because otherwise it is just these vicious attacks. And the way that it's filmed and Barbara Hershey's performance, plus the music score.
The music score?
Yeah.
Yes, the only other time I've heard this music score was in Maximum Overdrive.
Keep him into the house!
Landa, da sind Sie ja! Emmanuel, voici le colonel SS Landa. Il sera chargé de la sécurité pour la première.
Enchanté, mademoiselle.
I mean, music score.
Yeah, but it puts you on edge. It's kind of it's frightening.
Yeah, it's frightening that this film tried to go up against Poltergeist
Well, yeah.
and totally lost out. Because this is another thing. The family aspect in this movie is not as strong as the family aspect in Poltergeist. In Entity, it, like I said, I'm already feeling like Mum's having a breakdown. Too much is going on, and she needs a way out. And it just so happens that this entity appears at the same time, puts her through these traumatic experiences and puts her in a position with people where she has to explain to these people this is going on. Now, all the evidence points that she has a supernatural demon thing on her shoulder using her as a sex toy. But all rational explanation shows that she's just doing it to herself, unless the people are witness.
Yeah.
Like when they go to Cindy's house, Cindy is Carla's friend, and she's wanting to help her out. They must have been friends for years, but Cindy's husband doesn't want anything to do with it. Thinks that Carla is a waste. She's going out with too many guys. We're always hearing that she's constantly leaving her children unattended. She just leaves them at certain points. But it's that point where Carla has come back to Cindy's house, and they're going out for dinner, and they're like, "No, you stay here. You stay here, and don't worry. I believe you, even though the doctors don't believe you, and your family don't believe you, and everything just seems like you're insane. I believe you." And I was sat there with my notepad. I'm thinking, "Oh man, it's going to be predictable now. The music's going to kick in. The entity's going to come into the room. He's going to, wine and dine her and, throw her on the bed and stuff." The fucking front room windows go boom out. The whole fucking room just explodes out.
Yeah. George and Cindy do return back and
Witness
the event occurring.
Yeah.
Although George is just like, "No, it was her. She did it. Carla Moran did it all."
Yeah.
But Cindy's like, "No, I saw you." And that's when Carla breaks. When finally someone else says to her, "I saw it too. I didn't see it, but I saw what was happening around you."
Mass hypnosis, though, as the doctors start to explain it in the film.
She then is soon sent to go and seek psychiatric help.
Yeah.
Because, who you gonna call? A shrink. And the shrink's just like, "Okay, let's get to the bottom of this." And after a couple of visits and the doctor continuing to probe, finds out that she had a pretty rocky childhood.
Yeah.
She had a priest for a father who, by the sounds of it, liked to touch her. So she ran away at a young age and hooked up with a much older guy who was drugs, alcohol.
Yeah, they were
bit of
just
a loose
hanging
cannon,
out. Yeah.
and died in a motorbike accident.
Yeah.
And so from there, she bumped into another older guy, and then she started having these different kids at a young age, so that, she's a mother with a teenage son, and in the film, 2 daughters as well. Yeah. And because of her sort of rocky upbringing and her childhood, the psychologist is just like, that's clearly all this is. This is just your psyche just dealing with your childhood traumas caught up with you.
Yeah, all the evidence points to that.
You were scared of your daddy. He was a minister. He held you in a way he shouldn't have held you. You were pregnant at 16.
Shut up!
A drug-crazed guy went off and killed himself.
Stop
Another guy left you with 2 kids. Now, Carla, stop it. Come on, do the work, Carla.
But then we see her get thrown across the room and fucking beaten the shit out of.
The doctor says, "Go home and have a shower and have a bath. Just soak up and relax."
That was harsh.
And so, you see her get in the bathtub, and then those doors slam shut, and you just know. And then, you see her legs being pulled apart, her arms being thrust above her head, and you sit there and watch her get raped again.
Yeah, but right, I don't fully understand this, but why wait? If this thing is so powerful, as she even explains to the doctor, that he's a powerful spirit, but he needs the spirits of small Chinese people to hold her.
Mm-hmm. You mean like children?
Oh, no. These aren't children. They're strong.
Dwarfs?
I don't know what they were. I couldn't see them. I felt them.
Doris Bither said that it was 3 Asian spirits or
Well,
entities.
no, this is the thing. The Doris Bither story from 1974 was that she was being raped by a single entity made up by the spirits of 3 Chinese people. Funnily enough, she also had 3 sons that she didn't have a particular good relationship with, but I'm not even going near that one. But in the movie, you have Ron Silver playing Dr. Snyderman. Now, Ron Silver, I definitely recognise as Senator McComb from Time Cop, and now The Entity. But he has an argument with Carla, and he's listening to her story and taking in it all like a psychiatrist would. But then he's playing it back to her in a way that he's trying to debunk the whole situation throughout the whole movie. So I fucking hate him throughout the whole movie, because I'm expecting him to be the guy who happens to run in, you know, like the psychic from fucking Poltergeist, to run in and witness this spectral event and be like, oh my god, everything I learned about science and medicine has gone completely out the fucking window because now I've been proved that there's an alternate universe. Never happens once. Not even the end, which we will get to. He's just there constantly. Nope, Carla, it's all in your head. It's all about your past. You know, you're telling me that this thing is so powerful, but you're telling me that it needs help to hold you down.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, Carla, how do you explain that? You know, it ultimately it all sounds like it's all in her head.
So why does he need help? But he has 2 helpers, right? 2 little ones? Right? Those are your words. 1 big one and 2 little ones. Billy's a good-looking kid. He's a strong kid.
You're obscene!
Why are you saying you're having trouble with Jerry and...
You're obscene!
Carla!
Calm down, I'm not here!
Carla!
After Cindy...
Well, she tells the doctor to fuck off, essentially. She's like,
Yeah.
You're a creep, I don't want nothing to do with you. It's got nothing to do with my childhood. You don't believe me, and you're not even going to help me get to the heart of the matter.
Which somebody having a psychotic episode would obviously say, because they
want to
don't
hide
see
it, or they're getting too far gone into their mental illness.
And funnily enough, after she has had this break with the doctor, is when Cindy witnesses this great
event.
smash up of their house. Which
Yeah.
I'm like, you know, I mean, we did Sybil with Sally Field, and Sybil had these little episodes where she would black out and somebody else would take over. And I was starting to get a lot of feel of that from The Entity as well, that we are witnessing Carla's persona. Carla's persona. But this other character that she has created is smashing the place up. But then Cindy's just like, well, what are we going to do? And immediately I wrote it down. I'm like, you're going to need an old priest and a young priest. And not 10 seconds fucking later, they're in a bookstore.
They go to Ray's Occult Bookstore, and they just openly hear 2 guys talking about paranormal investigations.
That's just a coincidence.
Well, the
isn't it?
thing is, that's what was written in the book, and that's what actually happened in the real life.
Right, yeah.
They met in an occult bookstore, and she just, the actual Doris Bither just turned up and went, my house is haunted. And the 2 investigators went, really? Can we come and have a look? And that actually happened, like, from there. And, obviously the names are all changed in the film and in the book, but the guy who does the investigation for The Entity, I can't remember his name right now.
Yeah.
If you look him up, he's done more than 4,000 paranormal investigations.
And how many has he
And
proven?
he has said that 95% of them are all, fakes, or really it's all psychological. Or whatever. So, but he said there's still 5% that science has not yet been able to explain. And he is still saying about the Entity case, the real doctor, that some things happened in this house that we haven't been able to explain or prove yet.
We had some people that were skeptical. We weren't claiming we knew what it was. Even today, we don't know what it is. There are theories as to what may have been happening, but it's speculation at best. Kentucky windage.
I don't know what you think you've discovered, but you're playing with fire.
See,
now, within the film, she brings these 2 into the house, and immediately the ghost starts, or the entity starts playing with them by shaking the mirror and shaking things. This is after the 2 of them have teased by slamming doors and going, was it like that?
Oh god, this is like an hour and 40 minutes into the movie. This is a 2-hour movie. This is longer than Poltergeist, and by this point, I'd started to lose interest.
Now, this is where the film really picks up momentum. This is where it gets interesting.
Bullshit! It starts getting interesting.
Yeah.
What you're talking about, the bed sequence when
Yes.
she's in bed with the lightning on the top?
Yeah.
Nowhere as good as Poltergeist.
Well, no, of
No
course it's-
way as good as
Poltergeist is a fantasy of the afterlife and paranormal activity. The Entity is based on real events.
This was badly filmed
Yes.
and, in a way, badly acted. Not as bad as Hellraiser Judgment, I'll go on and say that. But in a way, it came across farcical. You know, like I said, these guys have walked into our house, and the ginger-bearded paranormal investigator, he gets way too many close-ups as the rest of this film comes on, and so many close-ups that it just makes it seem really awkward. Now, like you said, that you felt like it was a bit like Twilight Zone. And yeah, it was weird kind of camera angles, people in the background, the foreground. It was like the director was trying all these artsy different camera angles, but was failing to contain this supernatural horror aspect of the film. You know, it should be just focused on Carla, the investigation, i.e. Poltergeist. That's why Poltergeist is so successful. This one tried to make it a bit more scary because it wasn't, in a way. They've walked into our house, walking around, and the guy literally slams the door. Was it like that?
It was much stronger than any earthquake. And I tried to get out of here, and I wanted to get the kids out, and I called Bill. Bill was in his room. And then the door slammed. It was just a horrible thing.
Where is Billy now?
He's out in the garage. You can talk to him.
Door slam like that?
Stronger. Much stronger.
I'm like, is that a joke? I mean, how many... Do you know what a door slamming sounds like? And then they just happen to walk past the mirror and the house starts to shake. Oh, rah, 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 rah. You know, he might as well just shout, "Get out."
Get out! This isn't Amityville.
Well, but this is it. Like I said, I have looked at a lot of this stuff in the past. Amityville. The family moving into Amityville. The whole film behind it based on a true story. Bullshit. Guy shot his family and they weren't able to pay their mortgage. As the years goes on, these films start to not seem as credible as they used to be.
This one here, granted, it does take it to a far-fetched point. The book does, based on which, you know, it has a whole ending. The book and the film has a whole ending which didn't happen in reality.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to segue from the film into what did happen in reality.
Right.
And is that these investigators turned up.
Yeah.
And they took pictures of the weird sort of lightning effect that is in the film, and they had a camera. All of the footage came out negative, just all bleached out. Every picture that they took.
Surprised.
Now, here is the interesting thing, is that when they were sat there with Doris Blythe, and she would say, the entity is right here, it's in front of my face.
How could she see it?
She feels it. She knows it's there. She can see it.
Right, okay.
So they took pictures of her. And what happened on the picture? They're all bleached out. You can't see anything. And so they sat there still.
Yeah.
And then Doris went, "It's just left." So he pulled up the camera and took a picture. You know what? The image came out. Okay? And he tried this was his controlled method of testing. He did this several times. And every time she said the entity was nearby, any pictures bleached out.
Okay.
There was also another series of pictures that they took where she's on the bed,
Yeah.
and they had up to 20 to 30 other investigators in the room.
Yeah.
And the room filled with orbs that flew around.
Oh, don't even start me on the fucking orb shit.
They've got the picture, which is which was chemically tested and scientifically tested for frauds and fakes.
Right.
And the arc of the light in the room is not a projection because there's an angle on the wall and you can see the shape of it, and you can't prove it.
But now, this is my problem, is that, okay, the entity is based on real events, and Poltergeist isn't, but Poltergeist comes across better, because I know it's a film.
As a film, yes.
It plays on that fantasy role, and as we said when we did Poltergeist, we would love to have been involved in that, because it seems so real, you want it to be real. This is so real, it's unreal. I mean, she's lying there on the bed and the lightning's there and she's like, "Oh, it's so weak! Die, you bastard, die!" And those two guys like, "Oh my god, this is like the greatest single event in our whole entire career. This is gonna fucking make us." And then what do? They get a couple more people in. Let's get some more cameras up. There's one fucking point where you've got Carla, the ginger-bearded guy, his glasses friend guy, the old priest and the young priest basically, and the old woman. Right? So they're basically ripping off Poltergeist, or Poltergeist is ripping off them with the paranormal investigators that would come to the Freeman's house. But they're in there and they're filming, and this weird green thing appears. It's like a character out of Star Trek. And they're like, oh my god, this is like the single greatest thing to ever explain life after death. This is like, oh, awesome. Did you see it? Carla's like, yeah, did you see it? And everyone's like, yeah, we saw it. Well, how are we going to explain this? Carla walks out of her bedroom. There's like fucking 30 people outside. Why didn't you just open the door so you could get more witnesses?
Well, if the actual event was witnessed by all of them, they all witnessed it in reality. And guess what? None of the footage or pictures came out.
Oh, surprise.
And so people are like washing it off as like group kind of hysteria.
Yeah.
But really?
Dude, unless it's the guy from Sleepy Hollow stood there with a fucking axe, you know, you can put your fucking hand through him, you ain't getting shit from people. You know, just a couple of orbs, a slow spark lightning. Now, don't get me wrong,
They said they saw a green, they said all of the plasma and lighting was a greenish colour.
And I don't take that away from them. You know, you can see things at the weirdest time, especially darkened rooms, late at night, after not much hours sleep, you're concentrating, you're fixated on seeing something, that something will appear out of the corner of your eye. But we're talking a film that is almost 27 years old now. And in that 27 years, how many other people have been mysteriously raped by entities consisting of 3 Chinese spirits?
Well, people will have had similar-ish experiences, and a lot of them have been chalked up to sleep paralysis, which is one of the other things that they believe that Carla Moran or Doris Bither was suffering from, even though those that are our credible witnesses that gave testimonies about what they witnessed with her are still really unsure about what it is. I can tell you, in reality, they think the closest thing that it is that it is her own sort of subconscious manifestation projections.
Yeah, I'd go with
There's
that.
no actual there's no physical or conscious entity that is doing it to her.
No.
She is inflicting it upon herself, but because of the trauma and because of the fact that she may actually be partially psychic, that's a whole other bag to go into.
We're not opening the warp, are we?
Okay, so well, technically, they considered that she is a warp gate.
Yeah.
But there's also, within the real life story of Doris Bither, she played with Ouija boards and attended multiple seances. And so she was also an alcoholic. She also lived in a house that was twice condemned. And she also had bad relationships with her 3 sons and then the youngest daughter. And so coupling all of that with the fact that when she moved into the house, an old lady told her the house is evil, don't live in there. You know, that whole trope happened as well.
Get out!
And so, you know, coupling all that, it's very possible that she is inflicting it upon herself, but it's physically manifesting itself, which...
Getting back to the film, though...
it's frightening in itself!
In the film, it is portrayed to you that this entity exists, and the paranormal investigators all see this thing in action. And so we have all this mass evidence. And like I said... Senator McComb keeps coming back, you know, and I keep hating on him because he's not seeing any of it. And he's just hating on everybody's belief that this thing's going on. And it's like I said, it's one of those situations where you're like, you need to see it to be able to actually experience it and say, yes, it actually happened. Carla goes through a bit of a rough patch after all the paranormal investigators leave because... She has been seeing this guy, Jerry, who is another older relationship that she's having. And I felt like maybe he was married, you know, he was always off on business, shall we say, and was just hooking up with her whenever he'd come back. And he witnesses her going through this horrible thing. Walks into the room and she is being held down and And there was great effects on the nipples. The creature
The
was
special
licking the
effects is
nipples.
really good. They created a whole breastplate
Yeah.
so that they could indent it to make it look like fingers.
Yeah,
and probing.
it's probing her and fingering her. I don't know, but Jerry obviously sees it, freaks out, tries to fight the entity, can't, and hits Carla with a chair. And Carla is rushed to hospital. She's got a bit of concussion, and Jerry is there saying to the doctor, "I'm not going back. Fuck that. I'm not dealing with the situation." And the doctor's like, "But you have to. She needs you." And I'm like, I can't accept the doctor as the hero. He's been a douche all the way through the movie. I don't want him to hook up with Carla because it just seems wrong. I don't even want him around anymore because it's not about him. The science isn't there. But Carla is convinced by the paranormal investigators to go into an experiment. They've constructed an
elaborate trap. You know, it kind of reminds me of Evil Dead 2 because they built their cabin inside the school kind of gym.
Yeah.
And so in here they've recreated her house inside the gym.
But they've hooked up fucking liquid oxygen.
Liquid nitrogen.
Liquid nitrogen fucking
tanks with
flamethrower
hoses.
things. Yeah.
And so they literally are going to try and trap this manifestation, this entity. And
by spraying this area with liquid nitrogen.
Yeah, and so they've created a safe zone for Carla to run to should the entity turn up. And so, you know, they set the trap and they sit and watch and wait for it to turn up.
Yeah, but then Senator McComb comes up and tries to fucking pull her out of it because he thinks that she's crazy to even put herself in this situation. And I'm like, dude, you don't know what's going on. You should just leave, okay? Because you have no idea. And he goes off to convince the dean or the head medical guy to come back and, you know, shut them all down. But once they do come back, the entity turns up. The entity has now realised that he doesn't have to be scared of these people because, well,
they can't do anything to it.
They can't do anything to it, whatever it is. We never know. And it takes control.
Takes control of the fake house and starts trying to hose down Carla with the liquid nitrogen.
Why? Why?
Because it likes to beat her and scare her and, you know, make her...
I thought he'd like to have sex with her.
Well, that too.
Can't really have sex with her if he freezes her.
I don't think the entity particularly knows what it would do to her, but...
It took control of a car, dude. It should know what it... right, anyway.
Okay, like I said, this whole gym house trap thing did not happen in reality.
Really?
The author of the book just literally wanted a way to have a good climax to the story.
So he did this.
Yes.
He.
But you know, it's kind of... I always thought it was fascinating to see scientists try and figure out a way to actually trap a ghost, you know, or an entity or a spirit or whatever it was, a poltergeist.
Right.
And trying to freeze it, you know, it's an idea. It fails. Well, actually, it does succeed because the entity does get trapped in this great big iceberg-looking thing, which starts vibrating and then explodes. And the scientists are baffled. They're like, how did that even happen? Like, what happened?
Fucking stupid humans. That's what fucking happened.
So they're like, all right, Carla, you can go home now.
Yeah, you're safe. You're fine. This house is clear.
And, you know, so then we have the Amity moment.
And she just turns her back on it and walks out.
She's just refusing to let it have power over her, which I guess is a result. But then we do get the ending text, which says that the events that occurred to Carla Moran in this film and to Doris Byth in the real world continue to happen up until her eventual death. Now,
but she grew to live with it, didn't she?
She moved out of the house that's featured in The Entity. I think she was there 10 weeks after the investigation. She was gone.
Yeah.
Then in the next place that she moved up, within weeks, The Entity followed her and turned up and the event started again.
That's funny. That's weird, that is.
Then she moved again.
And
then again. before the entity no longer found her. So she did eventually escape it, or she said if it did arrive, the attacks were so weak that it was, it was not an issue anymore.
I don't I'm sorry, I've just got this thought in my head, like the entity comes home one day and she's gone and he's like, oh fuck, and he's searching the phone book, finding her friends, going to her friend's house, then catches up with her, maybe stalks her for a couple of weeks outside the window and then, walks in then.
Well, you see it either two ways, whether the entity was actually following her like some hauntings have said to have been, or it's the fact that these were coming from within her, and so therefore it didn't matter where she went, she was taking it with her.
Yeah.
So...
Yeah, like Peter Pan's shadow, mate. Yeah.
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 I've got a couple of favourite sequences in the film. When Jerry finds Carla being attacked in the bed, and attacking with the chair, and it's the realization. I always like the moments when somebody realizes that what she's saying is practically has some truth to it.
Yeah.
But I love all the science parts in the film. Now the film was quite heavily criticised for being way too sciencey, but that's what I wanted. And rewatching the film, it's what I really enjoyed again. This film, along with a couple of others, was the reason why I was kind of interested in sort of the paranormal and, and the strangeness of the unexplained. And, this film has some real good credibility when dealing with unknown phenomenon and still questioning it today. And those that were there at the time just wish that they had the technology of today to have actually tried to have documented it even better.
The technology of today can't even capture shit.
Not really, no.
It's the problem I find with this film though is like I said, going back to Poltergeist I know is a film, but it's a film world I can live in because I believe it's a film world. This movie tries to base itself in reality, and the realistic stuff that they do completely mismatches with the fantasy stuff that you've got going on. You've got the evidence right there of Carla being raped by this entity, up until the point where fucking scientists are seeing it and they're still like, oh, we don't even know what it is, but they freeze it in an iceberg, it escapes and just goes back to her house anyway and waits for her. She's moving out at that point, and I'm like, well, okay, so right, it's not exactly, like I said, the Freeman's pushing the TV out. It's kind of a better ending. I've got quite a few favourite scenes, but not on the same aspect of Gary. I did like all of the attack sequences, mainly because the actress Barbara Hershey really puts it across that she is going through this traumatic event. And at the same time, the director, which I will get to in a second, did film some of the scenes very, very well. The first attack on the bed, the initial smack to her face, the bloodied lip, her being thrown. The attack in the bathroom, her being thrown all over these places, face into the shower curtain. Even the one in the front room where, her legs are literally just hooked up and it's just going at it. She puts all of her emotion and all of her energy into making herself seem terrified, scared, traumatized, hating every single moment that she's going through, even to the point where she's, it actually, makes her orgasm at one point while she's asleep, and she doesn't realize until she wakes up that it was the entity. And I'm like, so this thing, you say this thing's not thinking or doesn't think. This thing knows what the fuck it's doing.
Yes.
This thing knows what it's doing. If he can make a woman orgasm and doesn't want to wake her up, he's like, oh. Some of my other favorite scenes were just stupid. I say stupid. I didn't understand what the director was going for. For example, there's a scene where Carla is sat in an office with a bunch of doctors and she leaves to go pick up Jerry. And all of the doctors, these are high-class medical doctors in this room. One of them smoking a pipe, one of them smoking a cigar, the other one smoking a cigarette. Actually, a few of them are smoking cigarettes. And the room is enclosed. The room is just filling up with smoke. And I'm like, come on, this is fucking old school. What's wrong with you, Dr. Peterson? Nothing. I need a couple of new lungs. I'm going to get them from that girl down there. And you can see Senator McComb sat there like, oh, can you get that out of my face, please? I'm like, he knows it's bad for you. Any of the camera angles, there were just really weird camera angles.
I couldn't tell whether they were superimposed because of the blur lines
Yeah.
around the image. It would be like in focus, out of focus, back in focus again. It's like,
Yeah, and it was like the camera was trying to give you a freaky view of what's going on, but the entity's not there. Or maybe I got it wrong. Maybe I was supposed to feel like the entity was watching them. That's what the entity sees. But a couple of times that ginger-haired paranormal investigator is there, and the camera's like right in his face, and I'm like, holy shit, that guy's scary. Another stupid sequence: the ginger-haired guy pulling the door, slamming it. Was it like that? How many door slams do you know? And the last one I thought was funny as hell was where Carla's in the house, right at the end, the last the experiment, and one of the guys goes, "Carla, don't be alarmed," and 2 seconds later the alarm goes off. And I was trying not to laugh at this point, but the film was so stupid, I just had to.
I definitely recommend The Entity. It is a fascinating story. Whatever was happening to Doris and to Carla, something was happening, still unexplained today. So I recommend watch the film and then watch a couple of the documentaries and watch a couple of interviews with some of the scientists that were there when Doris was undergoing these attacks, and see what they say and see what you feel for yourself. Call bullshit.
Yeah. I don't recommend The Entity. There's some silly camera angles. There's some silly dialogue. Some of the situations that Carla is in is kind of silly. And I'm talking about the same guy who gave us Iron Eagle, which went up against Top Gun. I'm talking about the same guy who gave us Superman 4. Just throwing it out there. All I'm saying is, like what Gary said, if you're into the paranormal and all the ghosts and want to make up your own ideas about orbs and lightning and strange paranormal activity, this film goes up there. You'll probably really, really like it. If, like me, you still have not come across any actual relevant evidence to cement that these things exist, it's gonna look silly.
Thanks for watching Off the Shelf Reviews.
Where is Billy now?
He's out in the garage. You can talk to him.
Door slam like that?